listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Brandon Elliott. I'm excited. We got Ashley in the house today. Not in the house physically, but over in North Carolina. Been doing student renovations for, his whole life. But back in 2013, took down his first 10 unit, eventually got to 30 units, 35 units, and so forth. Roughly having about 300 units under management right now, third party handling the management, but really focusing on the student renovations and serving that space. And so I'm excited to get to hear more about how we got here, Ashley, and what it was like when you first got started in real estate. But talk to me, for anybody out there that doesn't know more about who you are, where you're from, your background. Do you mind giving the listeners and myself that 10,000 foot view?
Yeah, man. Happy to. Thanks for having me, Brandon, and hello to everybody. Yeah. So like I said, real estate's all I've ever done. I grew up literally in the mom and pop version of what I'm doing now, because my mom and pop were the ones that were buying and owning the real estate. And when I was in junior high and high school, my dad would buy these big houses near the campus of West Virginia University, and then we would renovate them and internally subdivide them into rentals. And so I got to do the whole from, hammer and nail all the way to the leasing, management, financing, all the stuff. And we actually still own a lot of those houses. In fact, I was on the phone with the property manager for those houses just right before we picked up on this video. But since then, on my own, when I grew up and got on my own stuff, I started buying single families and duplexes and triplexes. And then in 2013, I bought my first, what I call a true multifamily deal, which was a 10-unit place. And then from then it was a 32 unit, then a 35 unit, and most recently a 196 unit place in February of this year. So that's a fast forward version of everything.
Talk to me about your parents for a second. Obviously, that was the motivation. That was what you knew. It's like, that's your lane, right? But did they have their parents that showed them, or how did they get into real estate, and what inspired them?
That's a great question. My dad, he was a bit of a hustler like me, I'd say. And his dad, same, just kind of like that entrepreneurial, I don't know what it is, that desire to just do kind of your own thing. And even though my dad was a banker, so he had a career like in the bank, and so he had to wear a suit and, suit and tie and do all that stuff. But I think his desire was to not have to work like that, to have in pursuit of that financial freedom, so that he could control his own time. And I think that was his motivation.
Sure. So before 2013 is when you got your first commercial, multifamily 10 unit. Prior to that, when did you get your first actual deal?
Man, that's a good question. I would say it was, I don't know, like 2006 probably was my first on my own kind of thing. And it was a single family rental. And again, I had always been, we've owned those other rentals this whole time. So it's always been part of my life. But as far as doing it on my own, that was probably, early 2000s, I'd say.
Okay.
And I was a real estate broker and still am, but I had to sell houses. Like my day job, if you will, is a broker representing people buying and selling residential real estate. And even though I got a 1099 instead of a W-2, it's still a job. And, you still got to show up and clock in, so to speak, or you don't make any money. And I just was always in pursuit, again, of that financial freedom. So I saw the benefit that the rentals and the passive income had, and I just wanted more and more of it. So that's exactly what led us to now. And, our goal now is to try to scale up to 1,000 units for the very same reasons.
Yeah. How was 2007, 2008 for you?
So it was tough because as a broker, here in Wilmington anyway, 2006, 5 and 6 were amazing. And then 2007 and 8 came, and then somebody like put on the brakes, and it just went down for years and years, 5 years probably straight down. So it was a grind. It was hard, but I'm kind of grateful for having gone through it, because it reminds you like, hey, you got to be conservative. You have to have that rainy day, because the rainy day is going to come at some point.
Yeah. How many properties did you have at that time?
Yeah, I probably had 3 or 4 at that time. Then and a much smaller scale.
What happened to those?
The rentals, really nothing negative happened to the rentals. Honestly, the tenants kept paying their rents, and the financing was already in place, so I didn't have too much trouble. But and then that's when actually at the bottom of that is when I bought the 10-unit place, and it was actually kind of a short sale situation. The bank was it became a troubled asset, and the bank was involved in selling it. And so I got it, looking back was an amazing deal, but it was a decent deal at the time. It was a disaster. It was such a mess when I bought it.
Okay. So talk to me, when it comes down to your real estate plan, what does that look like? Are you only going after student type of housing?
No, I'd say we kind of like run things on the spreadsheet. I'm okay if it is student housing. I'm okay if it's not. The 32-unit place that I have is near a small private university in a really tiny town in North Carolina. And that's been a great property, but I didn't buy it because it was a student rental. I just bought it because the spreadsheet made sense, and we knew that we could make the numbers work, and it was a good property. So we're okay. Our main criteria is North Carolina. And because we know the state, of course, but it's also where a lot of investors want to invest money. It's got all of the things going for it that you would want in a location that you wanted to invest in, like, good inbound migration. The job growth is strong. The political environment's pretty stable. So we like that. And, if it happens to be a student rental, fine. If not, we're good with that too.
And then how are you getting these leads? Well,
that's a great question. I've kind of done a little bit of everything, but like the 32-unit place was a direct to seller mailing. I created my criteria for my mailing list. And I think at the time I bought that in 2018. But I think the criteria for the mailing list was like all multifamily places in the state of North Carolina that were between like 20 and 75 units or something. And so I had this service create the mailing list, and I had my budget, and I sent the mailings out. I had enough budget to do 2 or 3 mailings, and the first one went out and nothing happened. And then I had the other one scheduled. It was like once every 3 months. And so I sent the next one, and at the next one, I'll be darned, this guy called me and said, "Hey, I got your letter. I've got a place I want to sell." And so I went and looked at it, and we struck a deal. It was actually $1.2 million for 32 units back in 2018.
Okay. And then how did you finance that?
That one was financed through local bank. And so a buddy of mine it doesn't matter that it was a friend of mine. It just happened to be that a friend of mine worked at the bank, but any bank would have done it. I'll tell you the big challenge though, Brandon, on that one was that I didn't have the down payment for I could get the loan, but I didn't have the money for the down payment. So I found the deal. It was a good deal. Got it under contract, lined up the financing, and now I don't have the money to pay the down payment. And so I went to a friend of mine and said, "Hey, I'm looking for partners in this deal. Would you want to be a part of it?" And I just figured that he'd say, "Well, yeah, for like 50,000. And then I would have to go get like 6 more of them because I needed like 350 grand. And he said, "Yeah, we like it." I said, "Okay, well, how much do you want to invest?" And he's like, "Well, I guess if we do it, we'll just do it all." And, I was like, holy moly, like that really blew my mind. I still remember that so vividly. And to me, that like held me back, like thinking that I had to have all that money in my hand before I went and started the process and found the deal.
Sure.
I'd say that cost me many years of my investment career. If I learned that sooner, I would have taken action much, much sooner.
What is that exactly? To just ask and get out there and talk to people?
Yeah, ask, get out there, talk to people, use other people's money. And it's not just that, like, I think the mindset was that it's not so much that I like needed something, like it was a negative situation, like, holy crap, I don't have any money.
Yeah, it's like,
and then I was like
that mindset of, can I borrow some money? Can I get some money? I need it. It's like,
Right.
no, that's not the right mindset behind it. It's actually
Right.
you doing them a favor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the big switch flip for me, was that it's a win-win. This guy's giving me his money that's not making any money. And so now we can buy the property and we're both making money, and we still own that place. We've got our cash. Well, I didn't put any cash into it. He put all the cash into it. We basically own it half. And so nobody's got any money in the deal. And we're getting ready to refinance it sometime in the next 12 months we'll easily take $1 million of cash out of that thing, maybe more. And then we'll still own it.
I love it.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. What other, so you talked about getting your lead generation. You talked a little bit about financing. You've been just getting out there and raising more capital, speaking, locking things up in contract, not having it all figured it out yet, talking to banks, but then getting the words out there and showing people that you have this opportunity. And what other hurdles have you experienced along the way?
Yeah. So, this most recent one, it was a big jump in price. So the prior largest property that we own is 35 units. And the most recent one we bought is 196 units. So the purchase price on the most recent one was $21,250,000. And as we got into that like larger segment, I guess, then we're learning. We had to not relearn, but learn the nuances of that specific financing packages, and that the specific way that those investors think of things. It's not any different of a business than a triplex, but it's a different type of financing. It's a different mindset. And so we thought that
it's just multiplied by 80, That's all it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's just it's a bigger number. So yeah, we were nervous about that for sure. But we learned like little nuances about how lenders, they don't love small markets as much as they love big markets. They don't love older assets as much as they love bigger assets. And, kind of balancing, well, the returns are higher on the older, smaller town stuff than they are in like Class A stuff in downtown Charlotte, but the financing's tougher to get.
Difficult.
And so we're learning all of those nuances.
Yeah. And so you're still going to bank financing for the hefty part of it, right?
Actually, no. On the most recent one, we're dealing with, like, we got some bridge debt from, a large like Wall Street. We're just little guys down in North Carolina talking to these Manhattan, big Manhattan financiers and stuff. So we're learning through that. But we're currently refinancing that debt into a HUD 223F multifamily refinance loan, which, once we get it, it's going to be like the jackpot. It's a 35-year fixed interest rate with a 35-year amortization, and it's a cash out situation. So the thing that we're learning on that, or that we have learned, we knew it going in, but it takes 8, 9, 10 months to close that specific loan. It's a very laborious grind of a process.
Why is that?
Which is okay. We work hard at it and it's fine, but
why is that?
Well, I guess because it's the government. I don't know. I think a lot of it is that they're giving you a 35-year loan. In 35 years, I'll be 90 years old. And so they want to make sure that their collateral is going to be good for the next 35 years, because they're making a 35-year loan that's assumable. If we want to sell it, someone else can assume it. And so it's just, there's a lot of investigation into our background, into the structure of the legal structure that we have set up, inspection upon inspection on the property itself, on its condition. Here's another, for example, then I didn't know anything about this, but there's a water tower Like the city has a water tower, and it's on a lot that's right adjacent to this piece of property. Well, that resulted in that we had to get a fall study done. In other words, if this water tower falls over, is it going to hit one of these buildings or not? And I would have never known that. But it turns out that it's designed there, these things are designed to like collapse. So if it falls, it'll fall pretty much straight down and it won't hit anything. But we didn't know that, and that could have killed the deal or caused a problem.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as the future goes for you right now because you haven't taken down that 196 unit yet, right?
Well, no, we own it. Yeah, we took it down with the bridge debt, and we also have limited partner investors.
How long is that bridge debt?
The final maturity is like February. It was for 12 months. So it's
Months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the goal is to knock out the HUD 223F with that?
Yeah. In fact, we submitted it to HUD. We submitted the application today. Now, of course, the government shut down, so they're not in the office working on it right now, which is another twist that we would have never been able to guess. But once they open back up, it's going to be like 30 days and till we get the HUD approval, and then we'll close 30 to 60 days after that.
Okay. And then what's the interest rate that you're paying on the bridge right now, and what are you expecting on the new one?
So yeah, the rate on the bridge, the blended rate between the senior and the mezzanine is like 8.75. It's pretty high.
Yeah.
And on the permanent, if we closed, well, I don't know what it would be today, but last week had we closed, it would have been like 5.85.
Yeah.
So we'll close. We don't lock the interest rate until 30 days prior to closing. So hopefully the rates work in our favor and we can do even better.
Good. I like it. With the rates where it's at right now, is it a project that needs to still get stabilized?
No, in fact, it's going to help our cash flow tremendously with the 35-year amortization and then the reduction in the debt service because of the rate and the amortization schedule. We'll save a huge amount of money every month on debt service. But we've already stabilized the property. We've owned it for 8 months. Our occupancy is already back to 97.9%. Concessions are burning off.
No renovations needed?
We're kind of improving units as we turn them, but it's not like we set out to do a full scale turn classic units into platinum, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, Brandon, that's one of the reasons that we bought this place is because the numbers worked based on what it was already doing. And so a lot of times I get these things that'll come across my desk and the brokers will say, hey, this thing has upside $200 a unit upside, and all you have to do, and then they give you this list of like, you need to renovate this and that, blah, blah, blah. And to me, like, I want to buy something based on its value of what it's doing right now. I mean, to me, that's what it's worth. I think it's great if it's going to do more, but that's what I want to get. That's the benefit I want to get after I do all the work.
Sure.
I don't want to pay the other guy for it.
So why did the sellers sell that property?
I asked the same question, and this was a big, huge, basically they do exactly what we do, except they're huge. And the story that they told us was that this fund was closing out. It was a 5-year hold project for them. And it was time for them to sell it and get their money back to the investors and go on to the next thing. So I think it's just a cycle of timing for them.
Yeah. Where do you think the market's going in the future? I won't hold you to it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, man, I wish I knew. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think that multifamily is always going to be a very strong investment because people are always going to need a place to live. And in fact, we learned that through COVID when there were lots of problems in the world and lots of things couldn't succeed, like office buildings had problems. Well, we never had a problem because people will take care of where they have to live and they'll make sure that they have shelter for themselves and their families. And the demand for housing is just increasing. And so I think it will always be a good investment. And yes, it fluctuates with when there's too much supply and then, it's got to catch up in that little snapshot of time window. But overall, it's going to be a fabulous investment. I think that rents now have been very flat. Like, we haven't been able to raise rents a whole lot in the past few years. And I do think that that's probably, and at least in the markets that we're in, that's probably getting ready to change soon. And we'll get some rent growth, I think, soon.
What about
the financing is what I don't know. I mean, if we could get the financing to loosen up a little bit, that would help the transactions out a ton. But I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, everybody's been waiting for like years, I feel like. And so who knows?
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, appreciate you jumping on today. Anything you want to leave for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know where everybody is in the phase of their real estate investing career, but I would say that don't do like I did and wait too long thinking you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
There's always someone like Brandon or like me that would be thrilled. If somebody called me and said, "Hey, Ash, I heard you on Brandon's show. Could you help me with this?" or "What's your experience with that?" I would sit down and talk as long as they wanted to talk and share my experience. So I would encourage people to do that. And also, that deal that I was telling you about, the one that we're refinancing, we still have $1.5 million to raise to get to our $6 million goal. And so if anybody wants to, start their real estate investing career as part of a syndication in North Carolina that's already, I forgot to tell you, we bought it for $21,250,000 8 months ago, and our refinance appraisal is $25,400,000. So we've already increased the value 17% just in 8 months. So if anybody wants in on that, we've got room on that one.
I love it. How can people get a hold of you?
I think the easiest way is the website. It's abgmultifamily.com. And once you get on there, you can find all the other contact.
Love it. Awesome. Well, guys, I highly recommend, if you want to get a hold of either of us, do so. Obviously, do your own due diligence. This was an excellent podcast. Tons of value. Ashley, appreciate you jumping on today. Guys, if you want to get a hold of me, you can always do so on Instagram. It is Brandon Elliott Investments. Otherwise, our business page, Credit Counsel Elite. Check out our website as well, creditcounselelite.com. That's creditcounselelite.com, where we are showing you how to get access to massive amounts of funding. I'm talking up to $500,000 with rates as low as 0%, and being able to repeat the process every 6 months. If you guys have any questions behind that, you can book a call with our team. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Till next time, God bless. See you guys.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next time, God bless.